Hello and welcome, my name is Ajaxpost and we're here with the long-awaited third development highlights video for Transport Fever 2. As presented by Tom, Community Manager for Urban Games. Now I have, as usual, muted his original commentary, so you can just hear me talking through my understanding of what he's telling us, what we're seeing, and just reacting to what delights, what awesome gameplay features we can look forward to in this upcoming release, which is due out in Q4 in 2019, so not too long to go now by all accounts. As far as I'm aware, that date is still on the calendar. Obviously, as usual, if you want to hear Tom's original presentation, there's a link to that in the description below. But I'm just here to give you my slightly more long-winded. He packs so much into 3 minutes, and I'm just waffling here, explaining why I'm going to take a lot longer to do that. But first off, I paused the video here, just another moment to enjoy the beautiful landscapes that we're getting in Transport Fever 2. It just looks gorgeous. Smokestacks, I mean this city, I mean look at that. I don't know which of the biomes this is referring to, but this, look, it's probably tropical, I'm guessing. But look at this differentiation between the suburban low density sprawl, as you might know it in any other city builder game, and the high density city centre where everything goes on. Okay, so apart from the gorgeousness of it all, what's Tom telling us in this video? It's all about the basis of the simulation of demand, basically, for what you need to satisfy to make your cities grow and develop. And one interesting thing he said, and it was kind of true in the Transport Fever game, but I think it looks like it's going to be even more significant here, is that cities will not only grow when you satisfy the demands and get people moving around and cargo and industrial goods supplied, but cities can shrink as well. Now, quite how significant an issue that's going to be, who knows? But what he's talking about here is how we can actually affect the growth of our city. And he's telling us that there are three basic demands that need to be met in the city. The first one is transportation. Now, we've seen already from the infrastructure video that we're not looking just at our own public transport, the trains, trams and buses, but also the AI traffic. I mean, just look at that tree. That tree just in the corner, just for a moment, just hold on. Is that an actual orange tree? That looks, I mean, it doesn't look, you know, photorealistic, but it is blinking gorgeous. If I say so myself. Look, passenger traffic, not passenger traffic, these are AI traffic. This is the ordinary people of the towns and the cities going around their business. You need to manage the private traffic as well to an extent. And we're going to see various tools that we can have to look at how we're going to manage those demands and see what the demands are. Now, the one thing he did mention is there looks like there's going to be no change to the basic route demands of your passengers, your citizens of your cities. They're still going to go from home to work and from home to the commercial centre, so shopping or leisure, that sort of thing. It doesn't look like there's any further differentiation in that between the types of work or the whether you've got leisure facilities specifically as such. But again, that may well develop over the course, and certainly with the modern community, we can add all sorts of new fun to that. Interesting note here, notice that this town, rather confusingly, is called Horn. I'm sure it's a perfectly acceptable name in some parts of the world. It's slightly, what's the word, innuendo laden in the UK and possibly in other English-speaking countries as well. Notice there are just two products they demand. That is food and presumably that's construction materials. That's a whole new thing that we've heard about from the press day they held with their influencers and the media, that in the new game there will not be three types of product, commercial, and three types of industrial product. A city will only demand two types of goods, a commercial good and an industrial good, and that will differ between the different cities, so it's going to be quite a different challenge in meeting these sort of freight demands of your cities. So what we've got here is going to be showing us very soon an overlay, a new layer they've added, so we can see here now the traffic flow. The green being public transport, the transport we provided, and the private transport. and he's showing their residential. If you keep your eye on that dialog box in the top left, you'll see he's changing the various sort of destinations that these people might be travelling to. So within the city of Horn, or to is that Bornersdorf, Breitnau, Ragosen and Weimüller. My sincere apologies to anyone who speaks German correctly for my appalling attempts at pronouncing your names. I do apologise. So we can see here where they're going. We can see whether it's all private traffic or public traffic, and we can kind of adjust, hopefully, our routes to match those demands. Again, just look at this. This is sort of the industrial centre, I think. Now this, I think someone mentioned it on a comment of the previous video when we were looking at, I think it was the press day or the original trailer. There was a glimpse of a mine, and we just wondered whether that was going to be just a scenario asset or actually part of the sandbox game. But these industries, these raw material industries, look fabulous. They really do look very impressive. And look, that's a truck stop. That looks really nice too. Now, the interesting thing about cargo, and say there are big changes going on here, not just the fact that we've got just the two products required in each city, but something he said in this is, what are we looking at here? Oh, this is commercial and industrial supply. We'll get to this in a moment. But something he said which kind of piqued my interest, but I'm not quite sure what implications it has. He said incomplete chains will function. So whether that means we can now actually get money from supplying logs from a forest to a sawmill, for example, without necessarily sending those planks on to a manufacturing plant, I don't know. But certainly from what he was saying after that, he sort of followed that up immediately saying, but for real growth, for those industries to develop, you need to supply the finished product. Now, quite what he's trying to sort of hint at there about the new industrial chains, I'm not quite certain. We haven't got all the details yet, obviously. So whether he's saying it's still like it is in the old game, you need to deliver to people, to industries in cities or commercial zones in cities for your industry chains to actually take off and for your freight routes to really make money, or whether you can just sort of get money rolling in on half a chain, as it were. So just as I said, like taking logs to a lumber mill, to a sawmill, and make money that way while you're building up the rest of the chain. It's going to be an interesting new chapter. I think that's going to be one of the key things about how we approach the game when it comes to freight. And here you can see that our transport is going, it looks like it's fairly good delivery. We've got a fairly good frequency of routes there, and it's going to the blue zone there in sort of top centre. We've got that supplying a commercial zone, and it's looking reasonably good. But there's a little bit of delivery over in the one on the right, to the right of that, where the blue is a lot fainter. So perhaps we're not getting as much there. And likewise there, the yellow is very, very faint. Now, what do those numbers mean? Is that the amount of goods being supplied? Or is that the speed on the tracks? I have a suspicion it's to do with the quantities more than anything else. And the other thing, so we've got, say, he said there was 3 categories of demands we need to satisfy to make our cities grow. One was transport for the people themselves, one of which for cargo. Oh, one other thing on the cargo before I finish that, which wasn't mentioned in this video, but was mentioned if you've seen any of the write-ups or the videos following the press day a month or two back. It was mentioned that there will now be a cap on production at certain industries. So certain manufacturing plants will only produce so much. Sorry, it's probably the other way around. The source materials, the ores, the mines, the forests will only produce so much, although the manufacturing plants could produce a great deal more, which means that if you actually start delivering goods to multiple cities and you get a lot of demand that your manufacturing plant could keep up with, but can't, that's because it needs more source plants to get materials from. So a sawmill will now supply not just 2 or 3 towns perhaps to make real money, but you will actually need to supply it with wood from 2 or 3 forests to ensure that it can actually produce and manufacture that amount of goods as demanded by the cities. So again, the whole dynamic, the whole mechanics of cargo freight is cargo delivery. Freight, it is freight. It's going to be quite different in this game. It's going to be quite a fascinating challenge. And the final thing to do here in terms of the growth of the city, we've had transport, we've had cargo. The third category of demand is quality. It's a broad term and it covers a number of things. Basically quality of life. So what we're pointing out here, first off, is overcrowding. And obviously people don't like standing in a crush on a platform or being huddled or herded together into a bus terminal. They like to have space to move, to enjoy taking the bus or taking the train. It should be a pleasant experience. And what they're saying here is that if you don't have enough vehicles, if you don't have enough frequency for your public transport, it will become overcrowded. We've all seen that on Transport Fever. And that overcrowding will have a negative impact on the growth of your city. So I think, as we can see here, what we're seeing in the sort of left-hand side of the screen there, that sort of red colour, is traffic congestion. So that's what we're saying up front. We're not talking just about managing our own public transport network. We also have to pay attention to how the AI traffic is working, how individual citizens are travelling around the city. So if we don't provide them with adequate routing, traffic lights, roundabouts, one-way systems, if we get all that wrong, there'll be congestion. They won't like that. They will leave your city or something like that. It will have a negative impact on growth, certainly. So that's one thing. So you also see there, I just noticed that in fact, I've only watched this video a couple of times, you should take the key points from it. But you see there the symbols on that dialog box about street traffic. There's a symbol there for traffic lights. Can we see any there? We can. Yes, we can. In the middle of this junction. I'm not sure if my cursor works here. Yeah, so on that junction here on the far left-hand side, there's traffic lights in the centre, and also precedence. There's a symbol for that, so you can. I'm not quite sure how. Again, this is a whole new mechanic we're getting in the game. How we're going to manage that? Traffic light precedence. Who's going to have the rights of way at each individual junction? I think we saw in an earlier video, the development highlights video, the infrastructure one, where we can give our own public transport right of way, bus lanes and stuff, over ordinary AI traffic. That could be what that's talking about there. The lock symbol is player owned. Now this could be the answer to so many complaints, so many people's frustrations in Transport Fever, is that I've laid down my roads, I've mapped out my city, I've put the grid in, I've given the city routes and roads to go everywhere, and the AI has decided to rebuild it all for me. It looks like we might have that problem solved here. It might be that if we create roads, the city itself won't override those road layouts. Now that could be interesting. Again, a whole fascinating new challenge to deal with. Sometimes I liked the city's rewiring my roads because it just added life, organic life to the village, to the city. Yeah, again, something else we can look out for. And whether you could actually, there was actually a lock on that. So maybe you could actually say, unlock my roads. Interesting. Oh, so many things to think about now. It's going to be a whole new game, really, isn't it? And finally, in terms of quality, emissions. And what we're talking about here, I don't know if this is the only emissions we're looking at. They did mention, I think they used the phrase pollution in the reports from the press day event. But I think we could just be talking here about noise pollution. And again, the thing is, people don't like living near noisy facilities. So they don't like living next to steel mills. They don't like living next to very, very busy freight routes, train routes. They'll move away. So you need to take care of that as well. The one thing we mentioned here was that you could reduce the noise emissions by replacing older, noisier vehicles with newer ones. So the question in my mind then, do vehicle specs actually include a noise value? So we've had power, we've had traction, we've had speed, all those normal specifications for a vehicle. Are we now also going to see noise or pollution potential as a figure on those vehicle dialogue boxes? So when you're making your choice about which vehicle to put on a particular route, could that be a factor you need to work into your calculations? So what are we saying here? Putting newer vehicles in obviously should reduce noise, obviously, and the way you lay your streets around residential areas. You could also, of course, use tunnels and bridges. So there you go, they go into the tunnel and the noise disappears. So putting now this, so I've just thought of this, I wonder if this is a first hint that we might have a proper underground system, a proper process for laying roads and tracks underground. I think it was in Cities in Motion 2. It might have been in Cities Skylines. I haven't played either of those games for years, but I know one or both of those had a really nice underground routing system. You could actually just switch into underground mode and you could lay your tracks, and it was fabulous. You could sort of see a shadow, an overlay of where you were in terms of the ground level, but you could focus on what was going on underground. That was a real bugbear of mine in Transport Fever. Once you've laid your tracks underground, editing, managing them, adding lights, junctions, switches, whatever, could be a real pain in the posterior. Hopefully that will have been improved in Transport Fever 2. But that's one of the noise reduction things you could do, is put your vehicles underground. Now the other thing here, it doesn't show any of this, it's just a comment he makes about airports, because obviously airports can be really noisy places as well, which is why they're usually situated in real life way outside the boundaries of towns and cities. He said you can reduce the noise from aeroplanes by adjusting the approach and departure. I think we've had a hint of this before. I think what we're getting by the sound of it is actually waypoints in the air. So you don't have to route, your planes aren't just routed automatically straight through the mountains or down valleys or whatever inappropriate routes they always took in Transport Fever. You could actually now design how your planes approach and leave your airports. That sounds really nice to me, and a great way of avoiding aircraft going through the middle of mountains. That was always a bit of an oddity. So there we are. I think that's it. I mean, I'm just looking here with, I might say I'm drooling, but I'm just looking at this and think this is just a gorgeous setting. This is just a gorgeous looking game, and it is only a railroad game effectively. It's only a transport tycoon, and it looks this fabulous. My next question, of course, is I hope they've optimised it, because I really want to play this game. I really want to play it big. So they've already issued some specifications, tentative specifications for the game, and I hope those aren't just the barest minimum you can get away with. Yeah, I'm hoping for that. So that's it. That's the end of this third development highlights video. A look at the city simulation, and I have to say I am still impressed. I'm still blown away by the potential this game offers us, and I'm really looking forward to it. So if you've got any thoughts on what we've seen today in this highlights video, drop a note into the comments box below if you've got any ideas, anything you think I've misunderstood, or any hopes that you might have for when the game comes out in, reminder, Q4 2019. Again, just drop a note into the comments box below. And of course, if you've enjoyed my little reaction video to this highlights, give us a like. It'd be very much appreciated too. And finally, if you've not already subscribed to the channel, please do so, and then you'll be notified whenever I release another one of these reaction videos or any of my other Let's Plays or tutorials on the channel. So from me, Ajaxpost, here looking at Transport Fever 2 Development Highlights video number 3. I'll see you again soon. Until then, bye bye for now.